everyone. My name is Jesse Chason with Lisa Blanchard as the host of Airing Addiction.
I share often my journey started on this campus. Got sober as a client here, just like you.
I really do see phenomenal change.
Always hope. I've seen situations that on the surface look impossible become possible.
Doing this podcast is to share those recovery stories, be honest about what the challenges are and have some real conversations, but kind of share that out on the airwaves.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Airing Addiction. So glad you're able to join us, whether you're live on Facebook now or catching this later on one of the many podcast apps that we're on. If you are watching this live or listening to it somewhere around when we record, happy Thanksgiving. This is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Before we hit live here, we were talking about gratitude, and I'm sure that'll find its way into the podcast somewhere. So I am super excited for our guest today to get to tell his story, a little bit about him, what he does in the field. And to introduce our guest, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Lisa. Good morning.
Thanks so much, Jesse. And like Jesse said, it's right before Thanksgiving as we are taping this episode. And I just want to start off by having some gratitude for everybody listening, everyone who's been part of this Airing Addiction kind of journey with all of us, and especially for my co-host, Jesse, and our fabulous producer, James. I'm grateful for you this season for sure. I'm also really grateful for our guest today. And so I was in a meeting with our guest, and he just had such a wonderful way about sharing his reasons for getting into the field and why he does what he does and his approaches that I was like, I think we need to have you on the podcast. So I'm really pleased to welcome Mario Chaparro. He's a person in long-term recovery for almost 10 years, and he's been working in the field of substance use disorders. He's worked in low threshold, models in Boston, working with individuals impacted by addiction and homelessness, and is now the program director for the Caspar Men's Residential Program at Bay Cove Human Services here in Massachusetts. And so I'm just really excited to have you here, Mario. So I wonder if you want to just kick us off by, as much as you would like to share, by just starting us off a little bit about you and your story and in your recovery story.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you, guys. I feel honored to be on your podcast and to literally be able to share my story and share some experience, strength, and hope to people that are listening and who really, people who understand addiction and homelessness, but also to the people who don't. Because there are some people who don't understand what addiction and homelessness really, really is and the impact that it takes on individuals. So thank you again. For myself, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I got into recovery about 10 years ago. Actually, this upcoming May will be 10 years. But I got into recovery. It was kind of a dark place for me at the beginning of my of this last run, because I've had plenty of runs, just like a lot of the individuals that I work with. They've had plenty of runs, and the good thing is, like, there's hope, right? We can make change, and we just need the support. And I guess that's where I come from, and having the support is what really brought me to a better place. But in order to get that support, right, we have to understand, and people have to understand what addiction really is. It's not, just this moral compass that's messed up, because that's not what it really is. I don't think anybody out there who's suffering from the disease of addiction wants to be suffering from the disease of addiction. Like, no one really wants this. And it's not something that you just think, morally, I just want to keep doing this. Like, no, that's not what it is. But for myself, again, I've used all types of drugs. You name it, I probably used it. My drug of choice has always been opiates and heroin. I'm an ex-IV drug user. With that being said, I literally used drugs for probably over 20 years of my life. I started using drugs at a very young age, very young. I come from a household where I have 3 older brothers, and I learned, so to speak, the game, right? I learned this game literally watching my brothers and following my brothers, and I didn't know no better at the time. I just thought it was a cool thing to do, was to, you know, smoke a cigarette and drink and smoke some weed. And that's what I thought was okay, because that's what I grew up in and that's what I seen. And, you know, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in Roxbury and Jamaica Plain. And that's where I literally like learned how to just, you know, hang out and be with people that I thought were doing the right thing. I thought, you know, occasional drug use, like drinking alcohol. And, you know, back then I didn't think, I really didn't think much of alcoholics, right? I didn't think like alcohol was even a real problem. You can go buy it at a store. You know, like I had no clue. But as, you know, as time goes on and you start to experiment with different things for many different reasons, right? People, in my case, like I experimented because like I wanted to really distance myself from the reality I was living in. Because I didn't grow up in a nice household. I didn't grow up, you know, with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up with nothing. I grew up with absolutely nothing. My parents migrated from Puerto Rico, didn't know no English. So it was kind of tough on us, given, you know, I come from a household of addiction. Like I have 4 older sisters, and thank God, like my older sisters were smarter than we were, right? And I always say that, like, women are so smart because they literally, like, they didn't do what the boys did. They went to school, they got educated, they did what they had to do, and then we were just, you know, running the streets. So at the age of about, I don't know, I'd say about 10 years old, between 9 and 10, I still have this picture. And it's funny because in this picture, I'm with a childhood friend of mine's. And I got a Budweiser in my hand and we're drinking a Budweiser, me and my childhood friend. And I still have that picture till this day. I'm in like these pajamas, like these Boston Celtics pajamas, and I'm drinking a Budweiser. And I look at that picture because that picture brings back like these memories where like I know exactly what house I was in. I know exactly what was going on that day. We had a big family party and like everybody was drinking and smoking. And I remember that. And that vision in my head is really, it takes me back to a place where I say, you know, like, this is why, like, this is what happened to me. And I could literally, like, that's about as far back as I can remember where I was like really starting to get into to drinking and doing drugs. As time goes on, you know, like I said, being young and coming from where I come from, I literally like just kept experimenting. And the sad part is like, you don't have, when you come from a family like where I come from, like there's not much support. Because again, like everybody's mixed in and doing things they shouldn't be. And you just pick it up as a kid, right? So you start to live that life that you're pretty much role modeled into. And that's where I went with it. Kept drinking, smoking cigarettes, progressively went into marijuana. And I know marijuana is legal right now. But I'll be honest, I truly believe, and for my own personal story, I know that that's a gateway drug. I know that will start people to do certain things that they're going to regret and not want to do later on in life. Like I've seen it happen to a lot of my friends. It happened to myself. And again, I know that it's medicine for some people, but for people like me, it's not a medicine. For people like me, it opens that disease back. It brings my disease back. So I choose to stay away from all substances, just because I know where I come from. So yeah, I smoked for a lot of years. Again, gradually, went from smoking weed to, smoking weed, drinking, and doing cocaine. By the time I was, I think 14, and I went into high school. I remember going to South Boston High. I was already at the ninth grade. I was already sniffing cocaine, and I used to be an honor roll student. I was an honor roll student all the way till I hit high school. By the time I got into high school, all I had was D's and F's, because all I kept doing was drinking, smoking weed, sniffing coke. Like, that was my thing. Didn't want nothing to do with school. And I've always been very focused on school. There's just, again, people don't understand, trauma in a young person's life can really mold them. It can make them who they're going to be in the future if it's not addressed. So a lot of the things that I'm going to discuss, honestly, I don't have a problem sharing my story. My story is not unique. There's many people in this world who will probably listen to this and say, you know what, I understand him. And I know where he's coming from, because addiction is not a unique thing. And people think, again, I'll go back to people think it's just a moral compass. Your moral compass is messed up. And that's not what it is. The reality is there's a lot of underlying trauma that people don't pay attention to. There's a lot of harm that someone has gone through, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, that can really take someone off track. So yeah, by the ninth grade, I'm doing a lot of coke. Actually, now I need to figure out how I'm going to keep buying these drugs. So again, I come from a pretty big family. My three older brothers, they sold a lot of drugs, and I got into the drug game. And that's what I did. I sold drugs in high school, and I made money to support my habit and buy my clothes. I come from, again, a poor family, mother on, welfare, father wasn't around. So those are the things that, kept me afloat, was for me to, really hustle on the street, sell drugs, and support myself. By the 10th grade, I was already doing, heroin. I was probably about 17 years old when I started to do heroin. And it's funny, I did my first bag of heroin with one of my older brothers. I was the first person I really got high with on opiates. And that took me to a place that I wish on nobody, right? I wish that on no one, because that was the line that I crossed, that I thought I crossed, that I wouldn't ever think could get any worse. But the sad part is it can. And that's something that literally took me to dark places, but the darkest place was when I decided to put a needle in my arm. So I didn't start with putting a needle in my arm. I actually started, sniffing like a normal person. So we say normal, right? But by the time, I started sniffing heroin, and, you talk to people, people, you're on the streets, and people give you these great ideas, right? Like, Mario, you could save a lot of money if you just shot heroin. It lasts all day. You don't have to sniff, 5 bags. You can do 1 bag in an IV and you'll be fine. And what did I do? I go ahead and I tried it, and literally it did. It lasted me all day. It lasted me all day for over 20 years of my life, that I kept trying to hide this pain, or, like today I know what it is, but at that time, like I couldn't figure it out. I was really trying to figure it out. I thought I knew some of it, in terms of, I would always, talk about how poor we were, and how like our parents didn't really give us enough attention, or how, whatever it was, right? That kept me in a place, in this dark place that I didn't know how to get out of. And it was really sad. When I think about it now, I mean, a lot of people say like you go through things in life and it makes you who you are in the future. But, and I believe that to a certain extent, but there's some people out there like that don't get it. And even if they did get it, they can't get out of it. And it's so hard because they want to, but it's just so hard to get out. And again, I'm fortunate, like I'm lucky, like I'm a survivor, right? Just like Jesse, like I'm a survivor, but not many people are. And the people who are is because they got the support. And that's the sad part about this. There's not enough support to help the countless people out there that are suffering from this disease. Like this is a disease. This is not a moral dilemma. This is a disease, and we need to treat it like a disease. And granted, like I'm glad that I do what I do right now. And we'll get back into like how I got in this field. But the point I'm trying to make is like not many people get those opportunities because there's not many people out there willing to give it to them.
Wow. Just wow, Mario.
Thank you. That's such a great point. And I want to move into your recovery story. But before we do that, there's a couple of things that just really jump out at me. I mean, you even started your first sentence, right? Wishing everybody strength and hope. And I think that we'll continue to hear that as a theme as we talk about kind of how you got into the field and then how we can support others. But I'm really struck by your story in childhood, right? And the impact of trauma. And I really appreciate your openness to share how impactful your childhood experiences have been to your addiction, right? If we, for those of you who do know this or don't know this listening, right, there's been some groundbreaking kind of studies that have happened over the last several decades, helping us understand how our childhood experiences actually impact all of our outcomes across our whole life, right? Whether it's, the possibility to have a substance use disorder, have a mental health disorder, have negative health outcomes, negative economic issues, and it's the ACE scores, right? Adverse childhood experiences, and if we were to do an ACE score with you, I have to imagine that there would be a lot of boxes checked there, and I just want to recognize that you put that out there. And I just really appreciate it because I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about how that shapes people enough and why that's sometimes makes it so hard to get out from where you are.
No, absolutely. And it's funny you said that. I did an ACE. I did one of the ACE exams on me. And literally, like, I think I want to say I checked almost every single box. We talk about, when we talk about trauma, when we talk about, there's just so many different traumas, right? Like people just think trauma is just a negative event or something that you witnessed. But trauma really like comes from so many different angles, and it comes from so many different perspectives in your life that people don't understand. I've been in situations that I never thought in a million years would happen to me. In terms of, sexual assaults and physical assaults. I've did 6 years in a state prison for a crime I never committed. And that was back in 1997. Actually, I was 17 years old. This is when I really got into heroin and started injecting. And, you know, thank God that I went to prison. I'll be honest with you, because the way I was going, I'd probably be dead. And I always believed that happened to me for a reason. I didn't do the crime, but I feel like that whole situation and that whole event saved my life. Did I get it? Did I get recovery when I got out of prison from doing all that time? No, I didn't. But the way I was going at that time, I needed something. Like, I don't know if it was divine intervention. I don't know what it was, but I needed something. And that was something that came in the form of, you know, handcuffs and a prison cell, right? That put me in a place where I could literally like start to think about my life, what I wanted to do with myself. You know, it brought some normalcy to me. And it's sad to say, because I don't think anything's really normal in prison, right? The only thing you could probably get normal in prison is your health back. And that's if, but, you know, weighing 140 pounds, you know, 6'1", and, you know, you're doing drugs all day long, to going into a place where now you're eating three square meals a day, and, you know, you're getting some sleep back, and your skin color's coming back, and, you know, you're feeling a little bit better about yourself, even though, like, being in prison, I literally always had to think is how am I going to survive in here? Like, I can't, you know, I've heard, you know, horror stories from prison, right? How am I going to survive in here? How am I going to make it out of here alive? Because that's what I used to think day in and day out. How am I going to make it out of here alive? I want to see my family again. And a lot of that made me really sit back and like read books and like just focus on myself and not focus on the negativity that was around me, because being in prison, there's negativity 24 hours a day around you. You don't know what's going to happen. So I took that and really thought about my life in a different way, even though, like I said, I didn't come out and was just great angel and was, you know, okay, like I'm going to make a difference now. Like, no, I still struggled when I got out. I was still homeless. You know, I tried to find a job, and because of my Corey, like I couldn't get a job. So I resort back to, you know, selling drugs because I needed to, you know, support myself. And then I go back to selling drugs, which means I go back to using because a monkey can't sell bananas. And it's just so many things, right? But that's why I'm here sharing this story, I guess.
So Mario, when I hear your story here, and thank you, like Lisa said, for sharing and just having the level of insight that I'm hearing from, you know, not only your childhood and the traumatic experiences, but survival, right? Survival by any means, both as a child in the prison system, and then when you get out of prison and you're sort of put back in a situation that makes it even harder, because I heard you say, you know, with Corey's, it's hard to get jobs. And I certainly, that's part of my story too. And certainly have had those experiences. So if I could just ask you what, you know, if it wasn't the 6-year prison sentence, what sort of happened about 10 years ago that led you down this path of your own recovery and now working, helping others find this gift of recovery?
So when I got out of prison, I was 22 years old. I got out of prison, and my son was born. Like I had my first child. My son was born the year after, in 2003. And I really wanted to do good. I did. I didn't want to go back to prison, and I didn't want to do drugs. And I wasn't doing drugs. I held 2 jobs. I actually became a dialysis technician So I was doing different things. I didn't ever think about working in this field. I never took NA and AA seriously. I just thought that when I went, before I went to prison, I just thought that I just had, slipped up and made a mistake, and I got into some things that I shouldn't have got into. And I never really thought about addiction. I never thought I had a problem. I just thought it was something like a phase in my life that just happened. I went to jail. I got it out of my system. I'm back to normal. I'm okay. I'm the normal me. But then my son was born, and I remember my son being born, and I'm saying, I'm never going to do this again. Like, I'm going to be a good father. And then, it's funny. This is just really, really touches a lot of people when I talk about it. I had a dentist appointment because I had 4 wisdom teeth that were growing in, and I needed to get the teeth removed, the wisdom teeth. So I get the wisdom teeth removed, and the doctor gives me 90 Percocets. I knew nothing about Percocets at the time. I didn't know what they were. He just said, here, you're going to take these for the pain. You're going to wake up tomorrow and you ain't going to be able to eat. You should, soft foods, but for the first 2 days, just try to drink many liquids. So they gave me these 90 Percocets. And he said, you take them 3 times a day, but if the pain comes, you could take an extra one. Like, I remember this whole spiel. I had to bring him to women's hospital. And so I started taking the pills. And it's funny, like, I started taking those pills, and those pills made me feel like, I don't know, like just a different me. I felt like, I can't even explain it to you, Jesse. I just felt like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say like I just felt like a whole new person. Like, my life had just evolved into this, I don't know, this great world. I don't know
that feeling, Mario.
I can't even explain it no more, right? But I started taking the pills, and after the 90 pills, it was funny. I started to get these feelings back. After the 90 pills were gone, like, I was getting these cold sweats again and the goosebumps, and I just felt like I was in withdrawal from opiates, and I didn't know why, because I didn't really know, and I still had the tooth pain. And I went back to the doctor, and I told them, I said, hey, listen, I still got the tooth pain, I'm not feeling good. I didn't tell them the symptoms I was having, but I just told them, like, my tooth pain was still there and I wasn't feeling good. If they can give me another script. And they did. They gave me another script for 30 more. So I ended up popping the pills. I took the pills and noticed my cold chills were gone. Like, everything just started dissipating in my body. Like, I could feel my sweats going back in within like 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, like, I feel like this is a problem. Little did I know, I thought I could control it. And I couldn't. And I had a second job working at a liquor store. And at that time, I literally started drinking again. My boss was a really good dude, but he sold perks, and I knew. So I started buying perks from him and drinking alcohol. And that's where, like, I just knew I was on a run again. Because now I just knew, like, it was tough. My son was born. Now I'm back doing all these perks. I met up with my brother, and my brother said, you're spending too much money on perks. You need to literally, like, take this, bag of heroin, and you're gonna feel better. And that was, the real beginning of my addiction. Because when I got into addiction the first time before I went to prison, I didn't know much. But when I got out this time, I knew now I had a problem. I knew now that this was something that was just going to haunt me if I didn't stop. And I didn't stop. It wasn't because I didn't want to stop, like I wanted to stop, but whoever's out there listening and knows or has experienced the disease of addiction, has, especially with opioids, then you know those feelings of being sick and like even right now, talking to you guys, I'm getting goosebumps because I know those feelings, and not many people who are listening who know, but the people who are, they're gonna identify with what I'm talking about right now, and those are not good feelings. So, with that being said, I just literally stayed on a run for a lot of years. My son was born. I split ties with my son's mother because I couldn't stop my addiction. Again, I got into a lot of trouble, went back to jail a few times. And in 2003, I mean, this from that time, that was like 2002, from like 2002 to about 2011. I literally was on benders and runs for that whole time. I probably would get 8-9 months clean, and again, due to lack of support, it didn't work. I would try and I'd fail. I try, I fail. I try, I fail, and just in and out of jail. But then I had my my second son back in 2003. Yes, 2003. 2004, excuse me. He's going to be 10 years old. 2003. So at the time that I was literally using, going in and out of jail, I lost contact with my first son. I didn't see him for over 7 years. I didn't see him at all. Not even a picture. Didn't know what he looked like. Just lost contact. I mean, there was restraining orders in place because of my drug use. So I couldn't see him. And when my second son was born, bless him, Christopher, I didn't want to do that again because I knew that a lot of my trauma and a lot of the reasoning for my addiction was because my household. It was because certain people in my family, and I didn't want to do that to my kids. So that literally opened my eyes to do something differently because I experienced it. I was the one who literally understood. In my own mind, I wouldn't share it with anyone because I didn't trust anyone. But in my own mind, it was pretty much, it was my own reality, right? Like some people don't go through what other people go through. It was my own reality, but I knew that it was real. So I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to do it to my kids. So my second son was born almost 10 years ago, and I wasn't going to do it again. So I literally got into treatment.
So how long were you in treatment for, and what was that experience like for you, and how has that shaped you as a treatment provider, and program director now? So
good question. So let me tell you that I didn't last long in treatment. I went to a detox, and that was it. They are like, I've done residentials, I've done TSSs, I've done them all. But this last time, I remember I was working for Best Buy, and my boss grew up with my brother. So I've known him since I was a kid, and he was my boss. And I literally went up to him, and I didn't want to lose my job, but I knew I needed to get help. So I said, his name was Bernard. He was a really cool guy. And I said, Bernard, I want to be honest. Like, I need this job, but I also need time off because I have a drug habit. And he said, well, you ever heard of EAP? And I said, no, I didn't know what that was. And he literally helped me with the employee assistance program. They gave me a week off, and I went into detox. I went into detox for a week. I got out of detox, and I went back to work. And it just makes it, I know there's higher powers out there somewhere, somehow. I don't know how it works, right? But I know it works. So I went back to work. I'm sweating methadone out of my system now. And I'm the salesperson for the TVs. So I'm selling TVs out of Best Buy in South Bay Mall. And, I'm sweating because this methadone is coming out of me, and I'm trying to work. And I only got like 6 days in detox, 7 days in detox, and I'm back at work. Now a customer comes up to me, and he's literally asking for a TV. So I show him some TVs, and he tells me he works for the Gavin Foundation. He tells me he works for the Gavin Foundation, and we start talking, and I sell him 2 TVs for the Gavin Foundation, which is literally, he was buying the TVs for their recovery center.
Yeah.
And I met this guy, and he told me, his name's Fernando Velasquez. He's a real cool guy. I still talk to him to this day. He's like a mentor to me. And he told me that he teaches a substance abuse class for Latinos. And if I was interested, I could become a substance abuse counselor. Got his number and literally called him, did the application. I didn't do the application by myself. I actually went to PAP. So my story has a lot to do with the Boston Public Health Commission, because at that time that I only had my little 7 days clean and went back to work, I would literally go to a program called PAFs. And I would sit in PAFs because I knew the people in PAFs, because I utilized PAFs so much to get into treatment that, they knew me and they always welcomed me. And when I did well for myself, they always just give you that support. They'd smile, come on in. We don't want you out on Mass Ave. We don't want you out over here. Just stay in here, watch TV, here's some soup. Just a lot of things, right, that made me feel welcomed. So I always remember that place. And I literally would check in with them every day so that they knew that I was doing okay. Because if you know where South Bay Mall is, it's like 10 minutes walking to PAFs. So I would just walk down there, check in with them, go back to work, because I didn't want to slip. But I remember doing that application with the manager at PAFs. And she helped me do this application. I had to write like a brief summary or like a small bio of why I wanted to be a counselor in the field of substance use disorder. So I literally, wrote it up. I showed it to her, and, that was the first time someone ever said, wow, like, you can write, like, you know how to write, like, you need to work in this field. Like, you're really good. So she kind of like gave me a little bit of hope there. And I submitted the application. Lo and behold, I got denied. I got denied. I called the person, and I literally told him, like, pretty much this could save my life. Like, I want to work in this field. That same person that I seen at Best Buy, and he asked me a few more questions. He said the class was full. And by the way, I lied on the application, right? And I told him this story because at that time you were supposed to have 2 years in recovery. You're supposed to have 2 years of remission. And I lied and told him I had 2 years. And I think I might have just had 2 weeks when I did that application. But someone ended up dropping out of the class and I got called. And they accepted me. And again, I'm really early in recovery. I don't know how to really handle my emotions. I got into an argument with one of my coworkers and I got fired from Best Buy. Funny, best thing that could ever happen to me, right? I got fired from Best Buy. I start taking these classes because I'm in class now. And I remember me telling my story because I don't shy away from my story. I like to share it because first and foremost, I might be able to help someone. But secondly, I want people to understand that there's no shame in this. A lot of people are shameful because they went through a process to get their life back together, right? Like they suffer from a disease that not many people understand or not many people can understand. So I'm one to share my story anywhere I go, with whoever, whether you don't like people who use substances, whether you don't like people, I don't care. I'm always going to share my story because I don't know who it might help. But with that being said, I went in there and I told them, I was real honest. I was like, hey, I just want people to know, like, I got fired from my job. And, if anybody needs any help, I'm willing to do volunteer work. I just, I want to do something. Lo and behold, I literally had one woman came in with an application, was like, fill this out, give it to me. And I got my first job at, I don't know how many people know of Casa Esperanza. So I got my first job at Casa Esperanza, and I think that was like 2003. 2013.
Yeah.
That I got my first job there. And again, I lied on my application. I told them I had 2 years, and I didn't. And I tell this to everybody. It's funny because I don't know how many people know of Hernandez.
Yes.
Yes.
So Hanan Hernandez is actually the person who started and oversees that addiction counselors program. So I ended up telling him, like, I think it was this year or last year. I told him that I lied on the application.
Kind of like when you tell your parents all the things you did that they didn't know about. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's safe.
But I told him that because I wanted him to understand, just like I want other people to understand. I don't think we should put a time frame on people with the 1 year, 2 year. I don't think we should do that. And I say that because I really honestly think that if I didn't get into that program and I didn't get to meet the people I got to meet working in this field, and the people who were already working in this field that were like literally educating me and pretty much molding me to be where I am today, I don't think it would have ever happened for me. And it's sad. Like I lied to get in, but I tell Hanel and I tell, other people like Fernando and people at Casa Esperanza, like, you don't understand, like, me lying really saved my life. And I don't think people should lie because I did feel bad about it. I felt like I was doing something wrong because I didn't want to live like that. Like I wanted to stop lying. I wanted to stop doing that. But at some level, like, I needed support. I needed to be in a place where I felt safe. And I felt safe in school. I felt safe at that type of job. Like I felt safe because I knew, like, the people that I were around were in recovery and they understood me. And that's why I did what I did. Fast forward a little bit. Now the program that Hanel runs, they don't ask you for your time. And if they do, you don't have to have 2 years. You just have to be willing to commit. And there's some other programs that I've noticed that do the same. And it's funny because now that I work for Bay Cove as the program director, I actually just hired someone who just graduated the program. And upon his graduation, he is now a full-time staff person here.
Beautiful.
Which is awesome because I know it works and I know it helps. And regardless, right? That's why we have EAP programs. See, I understand it now. And that's why we have EAP programs. Even if he did slip up, he's not going to lose his job. Like, we're going to figure out how to help him like I would help anyone else that's out there. So I don't know, like a big part for me was like that helped me in my recovery process. Not to say that working in the field helps. I still go to meetings. I still take the necessary steps that I need to take for my recovery. But it also does help me to come in here and to flourish, not just for myself, but for the other people that are around me.
Yeah.
One of the things I really hear throughout your whole story that I think really ties into what we can be doing now, right before the holidays, whether we're working with somebody that is unhoused or we're working with somebody in a residential treatment program or trying to support a family, is that support comes in all forms, right? And there's lots of people that support you, those that give you an opportunity despite your Corey, those that, help you get into school, that provide that access to an EAP, right? In a non-shaming way. Like just even having the conversation with an employer that, hey, we have an EAP, it's an employee assistance program. You can use it for this too, right? Is a form of support, right? It takes that, which I've heard you say throughout your story, right? That chronic disease model of addiction into account, right? Like if somebody were to apply for a job and say, you know what, I've been in remission from cancer for a couple of weeks. I think everything is going to be good. We wouldn't say, you know what, come back when it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't say that to people that, because, we're worried that you could have a recurrence and you'll be out of work and then we'll be out of a job and then it'll be a situation, right? We don't even do that with mental health.
I know.
Right? We don't say, you know what, show me that you've been to therapy for 2 years before I'm willing to hire you. We don't have those conversations, but we do that in the, addiction treatment space.
So true. And that's why, like, again, I like to talk about that. And I'm glad, like, I hope there's like some real professionals, that are watching this, that they can really like hear my story. Like, because in all honesty, like, I'm now a program director. I oversee 2 houses for Bay Cove. I've assisted in creating the first low threshold engagement center in the city of Boston. I've worked for the Massachusetts Organization for Addiction Recovery with Marianne Frangulis. I was the Northeast coordinator. Like, I've done so much in this field. I am a part of a documentary called Tipping the Pain Scale. I've done so much, all because, and it's sad to say, but all because I lied, but I also lied to get the support that I needed. And again, when we talk about, like you just said, Lisa, like, I don't ever see a job stating, oh, you have cancer. You got to come back in 2 years till, we see that you're okay because we can't give you a job right now if you're not in remission. That's insane to say that. I believe, because again, just from my personal experience, and I know where they come with this. So I also can see the other side too, right? Like, we know that we're working with people who have mental health issues and substance issues. And we understand that this affects people differently, right? One shoe doesn't fit everyone.
Yeah.
But taking the time and to give someone an opportunity, you never know where they're going to go with that.
Mario, I can relate so much to your story. I get fired up and inspired by your story. I've heard you say a bunch here. The support, right? You were a straight A student before real, hard drug use took over in high school, and then all those years later, you're filling out that application and that person says, oh, you did a good job on this. Right. And I know how that feels for me. I don't know how that felt for you, but I remember going to school and getting a good grade for the first time after, a long time of active addiction and just feeling like I'm never going to be the same person and getting that little bit of self-confidence. Right. And the support along the way. And there's a lot of similarities that I could pull out of your story, and we could talk for hours. I'm sure we'll have to wrap it up at some point here, but we work here at Spectrum Detox with paths closely. We're getting referrals from paths almost, if not daily, definitely, 3, 4, 5 times a week.
I love them.
I love them too. So when you said paths, I was like, wow, look at that. It's full circle. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one other full circle moment. I know Mr. Hernandez from a few different trainings. And even though I have not seen him in years, and I obviously didn't know him to the level that you know him, but the one thing that sticks out from Hernandez trainings that I've shared with my staff for years is he said clients have the right to lie to us. And here I am thinking, I wonder if that was because Mario lied to him and then right? But how true is it, right? We don't know what a client or a patient or somebody, that we identify as the person receiving services, how much of a poor historian or a good historian that they are, but we help them anyway. And I think your story is a shining example of, on the flip side of that, many people come into this field for many different reasons. I like how you said there, all the good stuff, right? The documentary, Tipping the Pain Scale, and, all these organizations that you were able to be a part of because someone gave you a chance, right? I'm sitting here as the clinical supervisor of Spectrum Detox in Westboro because a little over 12 years ago, someone gave me a chance and got me out of jail to come here as a client. And then I told my story on this podcast, and Lisa said, we're looking for another co-host, but why not? Right. So all along the way, there's this support, right? I don't think in this field we can accomplish much of anything without collaborative relationships and supporting each other. And, even though this is our first time meeting, Mario, I'm sure it's not going to be our last.
Absolutely.
Because I know where you work, and I've worked with Casper for years from this campus. And here we go. Here's another collaborative relationship. So I guess as we're kind of winding down, the question that we mentioned right before we hit live on this, we ask all our guests, what's one resource, a book, a podcast, something that you use as a sense of hope or a go-to resource for you?
My go-to resource, honestly, the Boston Public Health Commission. And I say that because it's not, first of all, like I say that because they're real, they're cutting edge when it comes to harm reduction. And don't get me wrong, I don't work for them anymore. But I sometimes I feel like I should have stayed. But I wanted, I said this not too long ago. I was actually speaking at the National Association of Public Health. And I spoke there, and I told them that I didn't really want to leave the commission or the engagement center. But I noticed when I worked there that a lot of our clients or our guests were coming back because they were getting kicked out of residential programs for like the littlest things. So I made a commitment to myself and said, I want to run a residential program, and I want to change the aspect of a residential program. I said, I want to change how people are getting discharged. I don't think it's okay to discharge somebody for a relapse. I don't think that's okay. So I decided to, to come and do residential now. But if for resources, I'd say the Boston Public Health Commission, they have every single resource you can imagine, from helping you with housing to recovery to mental health to you name it. Like they're doing it.
I think a great way for us to transition this episode, and actually I just talked to Jesse about doing an entire episode on harm reduction. So maybe we can have you want to do a panel. Maybe we can have you back to talk about it, because I love that. Like, you essentially were so connected to that harm reduction focus at the Boston Public Health Commission, saw that there was a need in other spaces, and brought that spirit of harm reduction to those spaces, right? And really, the way that I view the lens of harm reduction is it's really just about keeping people safe, keeping people here so that they can at some point have an opportunity, right, on their own terms. And I think that ties into one of the other things that really kind of struck me, right, particularly in the context of trauma, in the context of what people might be dealing with that are in active addiction, that are on the streets right now, or family members who are trying to support people. Anybody listening that's thinking, gosh, some people are having a harder time in 2 days than others, right, is that one of the primary things we all need is to feel safe, right? So when you talked about, being in school made you feel safe, doing recovery work kind of made you feel safe, right? We can only heal from a place of safety. And that's really the root of harm reduction, right? I'm here, whatever, no shame. I'm whatever you need. My goal is to keep you safe. So I see you tomorrow, right? Like, that's the primary goal. And so I'd love to probably after the first of the year, do a whole episode, really kind of breaking down some of the stigma and myths about what harm reduction is and what harm reduction isn't, and what that looks like in residential, what that looks like, in on the ground programs like Boston Public Health Commission, what that looks like in opiate treatment programs, and what that looks like for those that aren't even connected to care yet, but maybe accessing, harm reduction supports for right now. So thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for all that you do. For the field. I'd love to have you back. I think your story was so rich that, it took like most of the podcast, but I'm so grateful for that, right? So when we kind of think about what we're grateful for, as we get ready to whatever we're going to do to celebrate or, recognize Thanksgiving in whatever way we feel that is appropriate for us, particularly recognizing Indigenous people specifically, but find whatever gratitude we can. And I'm just really grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful you said yes when I asked you to be on the podcast, and I'm hopeful that you say yes when I ask you to come back.
Absolutely. I'll do this anytime for you guys. I mean, it needs to be broadcast, right? It needs to be put out there. The more we can literally shine a light on this disease, on harm reduction, and the upcoming models that we pretty much practice with to save a life. I think that's definitely what needs to be broadcast and shined upon. With that being said, I just think, we need to really stay away from punitive measures and keep doing what we're doing to fight this battle that we're all in. So I just want to say I appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to really speak candidly and tell my story. I've only told a really small part of my story, but literally I don't mind coming back. And I think this was great, and I hope someone got something out of it.
Thanks so much, Mario.
I know someone did. Thank you, Mario. I'm grateful for you, and grateful for you, Lisa, and James behind the scenes running things. So until next time, thank you everyone for listening. I guess this is the part where we say the like, subscribe thing. If you want to get more Airing Addiction in your inbox or however you listen to these, follow us on any podcast format, and you will be the first to know when we have Mario back on our panel. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks you all.
Thanks so much, Mario.
Happy holidays.
Yes, you too.
Bye-bye.